All right. I'm excited for a lot of reasons to welcome you, Bronte, to the Leaders Who Care series because I do love people that have unique names. And more unique probably here than there, but Bronte. Now, do you pronounce it Bronte or do you put some flair to it like Bronte?
Well, if I'd have known you were talking to me just for the name, Mark, maybe maybe
I
I would
didn't
have
say it
done
was just for the name. I said that was a uniqueness.
No, I pronounce it Bronte, but I do respond to a lot of variations on it. And little side note, in it comes from ancient Greek and it actually means thunder. So hence my nickname at school was Brontosaurus,
Oh
Thunder
my
Lizard.
God. Well, you do know Fleetwood Mac has a song, Thunder Only Happens When It's Raining.
Hmm.
So maybe you can do Bronte always happens or something when it's raining. So that's good. I didn't know that. Thunder. How cool.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the series. People will see why you truly are a leader who cares as we
Hmm.
go through this. Always the best place to start is if you could briefly introduce yourself. And I always have to clarify this, especially for men, because the first thing they usually tell me is their title and what they do. Can you tell, we'll get to the business stuff in a minute, but where are you from originally, where you are now,
Hmm.
whatever you want to share about family, siblings, maybe something you've never told anybody you want to reveal to the world now. That's always fascinating. Tell us a little bit about thunder always happens when it's raining.
Well, thanks, and thanks for having me. And I greatly appreciate what you're driving with the leaders who care. I think that's critical now more than ever. A little bit about myself, if you can probably hear from the accent, it's a bit mixed up. I'm originally from Australia, and for those who are curious, Western Australia, there's Perth, which is the most isolated city in the world, and then you drive 6 hours away from Perth and you get to the town that I lived outside of. So he drove outside of that town. So I didn't get out much as a kid. Um, so grew up on a farm, a lot of cows, a lot of horses, chickens, ducks. But I think it was a good life and it's a good way to grow up and I think understand a bit of the work ethic and understand, cows don't care. If something needs doing, it needs doing. So that's where I'm from originally. I have one brother, and obviously parents. Parents are still in Australia, as is my brother. I have bounced all over the world and I've followed a long arc to end up where I am today, which is in Zurich, Switzerland, which is absolutely like a fairy tale and is completely different to Western Australia. But I love it here and I have just, and we can touch on this more later, but I think this is where I'm going to settle. Um, it's a really good place to be.
Yeah, Zurich is beautiful. It's almost like a big small town or something. It's got a lot of character, um,
Yeah.
and stuff. Do you have brothers, sisters?
One brother who's pretty close in age to me, and he's still back in Australia in Queensland up on the Sunshine Coast, which is exactly as lovely as it sounds. There's a lot of sun and beaches.
I love the way you say Australia versus Australia. Because I know in Miami, when I first moved to Miami, the people that have been there a long time call them Miami and and there's also Washington, D.C. and things like that. I guess it creates a uniqueness in that by
Yeah.
itself. I love the fact that you said you grew up there, and I love that expression. What did you say? If the cows don't care if somebody needs doing, then it's doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but share with us a little bit. What were you like as a kid and a teenager? Were you like up early all the time because of chores, or were you pretending to sleep so the parents wouldn't wake you up, or did you ride the cows? What were you doing?
I was probably what would be described as a tomboy. I was usually up early because we actually only had wood fires growing up for heating and cooking and hot water. So that was my job. Light those each morning, get ready. The other thing, two other things I love doing that outside of school was horse riding. So I'm the black sheep in my family at the moment because I don't own, race, breed, compete, do something with horses. But I grew up riding nearly every day, and I credit my mum with that. She's a brilliant instructor, brilliant with horses, and horses can teach you a lot about leadership as well. Because Yeah, they're a large animal, and if
Yeah,
a
they
thousand
are.
plus pound animal doesn't want to do what it doesn't want to do, you're not going to make it. So did a lot of horse riding, and then my mother was a librarian, so
Wow.
I wasn't allowed to watch TV except for the Olympics, and so I was an avid reader, and I literally used to have a stack of books beside my bed. I think I was onto adult books by 11 or 12. I blame my mom for that. Um, but I love
Clarify
reading, and to this
what
day.
we'll clarify adult books, by the way, just to yeah. Don't get into a whole Jeff Epstein conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
appropriate books.
Appropriate, exactly.
Um, but I love reading, and I still read to this day. I think it's a brilliant way to learn about the perspective of others and to build that empathy muscle without actually, having to go there or be there. You can learn it, which I think is just amazing. So,
Yeah, it is. There was a video a while back showing a 2-year-old was given a book and he was trying to slide on the book. Basically, why isn't aren't the pages just moving?
slide.
Which is scary in its own right
Yeah,
that
yeah.
went on. Did you ride like competition wise or for fun or a combination when you were younger?
Just for fun, just for fun. So, for probably, gosh, I want to say a large number of years, mum wouldn't let me ride with a saddle. So I had to ride bareback. So,
Hang
yeah,
on.
I'll credit that with my resilience because I fell off my pony every single time. And if my friend was with me, we both fell off the pony every single time. Um, but as soon as I started riding in the saddle, I never fell out of a saddle. So,
Well, that
yeah.
makes sense. I had a friend of mine. She did dressage, um,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, those horses are beautiful and big and strong, and in a way scary because you really it's
Yeah.
amazing. You really have to develop a trust with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
To work with them. And she was a small woman, but
Mm-hmm.
the horses trusted her and
Yeah.
I always found that amazing because they are beasts. Man, it's incredible.
They're huge, and I think one of the special things, Mum had ridden a horse in competition when she was younger, and through connections, we found out where he was, and he ended up being able to retire sort of 12, 13 years later onto our farm, and he became my schooling horse. And I think this is a concept we can use more of in businesses. Here's this horse who is now at the end of his career, but I learned a lot riding that horse, and he was huge. He was big 17, 18 hand horse. So I think that was pretty special. Yeah.
For both, I think for you
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
probably the horse because they do feel in a different way.
Yeah.
We do,
Yeah.
and it's something that we call untapped talent, and it actually
Mm-hmm.
applies to grandmothers, grandfathers,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
people too. Of how do we engage that wisdom and give
Yeah.
them purpose still in their
Yeah.
life as
Yeah.
well.
Exactly.
By the way, there's a great movie I'll talk. It's called Nona on Netflix.
Mm.
It's a
Mm.
true story about grandmothers that weren't doing anything in particular, but brought into a restaurant and they became the chefs of the restaurant and it became
Mm.
a big hit. True story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everybody won on that because people loved to know what grandmother's cooking was
Yeah.
and so on. So moving forward a little bit on education,
Mm-hmm.
you got an interesting background. You had your bachelor's in information systems management and politics, which is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Um, as at both UNSW and the Australian Defence Force Academy.
Mm-hmm.
What were you envisioning for yourself back
Well, I get bored easy.
then?
So actually, it's even a little more complicated that I was initially accepted into law at the University of Western Australia, which is reasonably hard to do. Uh, but my mum had gone through one of the first, I guess, workers' compensation sort of discrimination cases early. And I sort of walked away from that even at a young age thinking, I'm not sure I want to be in that space. Um, it's a good space for a lot of people, but I wasn't sure it was for me.
Mhm.
And around that time, someone mentioned to me that the Australian Defence Force Academy offered scholarships. And given I was on a farm in a small town, this was a way to get up and out and to get an education.
Mhm.
Um, so I decided to join the army. which the conversation with my mum literally went, Mum, I think I'm going to join the army. And she went, well, is that what you want, dear? And I said, yeah. She goes, okay, excellent. So I had no clue what it would entail. Um, but to do that, it's kind of similar to West Point. You'd actually do a university degree or college degree, but at the same time, you're doing full military training. And then after that, you do a year of full-time army training. And I started with information systems because I thought that was going to be a critical area. And then economics and management seemed like a sensible thing to do. And then politics was easy to pick up. And uh, yeah, yeah.
They all come together, don't they? It's interesting. Yeah, before I got into college, I was in the militia. They called it the militia in Canada, and
Hmm.
but it was a focus on communications
Hmm.
predominantly rather than
Hmm.
information systems. It was a great a background. It was a great experience for so many things. I didn't stay in it after that, but it was. I almost think everybody should do it, if not if for
Yeah.
discipline and other things. So then moving forward from there, well, I'll back up a bit. You know, we founded our firm, Fifth on the basis that leaders and their organizations,
Hmm.
whatever it was, for profit, nonprofit, and family offices and whatnot, could always do better when they're doing good at the same time.
Hmm.
I never understood why it took so long to get that, but um, can you share with us how you evolved from, I mean, the Royal Military College, you were second
Hmm.
in command, you were an instructor there, you did some different analyses roles that you were in.
Hmm.
Then you got your MBA, I believe, at Penn, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken. Um, and then you were like a staff officer in the Australian Army. There's a lot going on there. So was there something in the back of your mind about making an impact and what were you thinking about? Was there a combination of you wanted to make some kind of impact, but you also wanted to make money?
Hmm.
What was going on with those different evolutions?
So great question, and I could probably talk for hours, but I'll try and keep it as short as I can. Um, Something that stuck with me, and it's a motto of the army or an ethos, if you will, is protect and serve. And I think there's a lot to be said for that, and that really resonated with me, even when I was young and didn't really honestly have much of a clue and had a lot to learn out in the world. But this concept of protect that which is valuable so that it can be better and to serve those that you protect. And I think that's really critical, especially in today's world. And so when I joined the army, we'd actually been relatively speaking, a peacetime army for a couple of decades.
Mhm.
And just as I graduated, there was the East Timor conflict. Not long after that was Second Gulf War. Not long after that was Afghanistan. So myself and my classmates graduated at a time where everything was shifting fundamentally, and literally we were being sent off into these combat zones. Um, my first specialty was communications or signals corps. So you kind of they smush a year of electrical engineering into 6 months and shove it in your head, and then um, before I knew it, I was in my next role, which was intelligence at the DIA equivalent in Australia. And this is one of the classic things in life. There's a lot of serendipity in life. I turned up and I was meant to be covering China. Army being army, like most bureaucracies, when I rocked up, they said, why are you here when I'm here to report for my role? And they went, well, we didn't know you were coming. Um, Someone's already covering China. Uh, Iraq is really quiet at the moment. Go sit over on that desk and get used to this. Well, a couple of months later, things happened. Um, so suddenly I found myself, right at the center of some difficult decisions, even for Australia as a distant nation. How do we support the US? How do we support our allies? Do we involve ourselves in this war?
Yeah.
Um, and I ended up deploying to Iraq as part of the search for WMD. I worked with Charles Dole for a little on the report that was issued on WMD and counterterrorism in Iraq. And I think that really shaped my worldview because now you're in the heart of it, and now you're seeing um, the cost of things when they go wrong, or seeing a different model how things can unfold.
Well, that's heavy stuff. One minute you're China bound or whatever, and then the calm before the storm, nothing's going on, but then everything's going on. How long were you actually in Iraq? I assume.
I was there about 8 months, and I was working with, yeah, it was an international force. So I was there with Americans, British, other nationalities. So again, that was, I think, touching on diversity, having different nations come together, bring those different perspectives, come together as allies. And I think that also shaped, and I was very grateful for that experience.
Did you
So,
call your mom and say, "Remember I asked you, I told you I was going into the," and you said, okay.
you know, I really am incredibly grateful to my parents, and I still am, because I actually think it's easier being the person on the ground because this is what we train for, this is what we go do, and usually, all else equal, we're trying to do something for good. Um, but my mum had to sit on the other end of a phone, and sometimes the phone would get cut off because things were happening, and then they just don't know, and they're sitting there for 8 months waiting for a phone call. But they never ever once, said stop doing that, or they always supported me in that. So yeah.
She never said, "Can't you join something like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police or something?" You'd
Oh,
be
I would in a heartbeat because I
yeah,
could ride horses. That's my alternate dream is to do something like that.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Wow. Yeah, you can't even imagine. We always say it, people say it insincerely. They mean it. We can only imagine. We can imagine. You can't really imagine. And for a parent to sit back and wonder is hard.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
hard what goes on there. We as a firm also we were launched about 6 years ago at the UN headquarters in New York on International Women's Day because one of our major initiatives was women leadership, women empowerment,
Hmm.
diversity, et cetera, equal opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. And and everything we do now, whether it's searches or projects, is
Hmm.
based on diverse experiences and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Can you describe the experiences that you've had? Can you describe it? Being a woman, obviously,
Hmm.
in a man's world, still to a great degree, and you know what that what that meant for physically, mentally,
Hmm.
everything you've went through, doing that.
Well, it's a great question, and I think, like I said, I didn't know what to expect when I joined, and I think it was both simultaneously incredibly challenging. In my class, there were 50 women that started and only half graduated. And
Mm.
of the half that graduated, most of us had injuries of some kind or another because you train to the same level as the men and you do everything and you know, that's what you do.
Like the
And if there's
cows.
some, yeah, it's like the cows, cows don't care. Now, but that said, the esprit de corps and the camaraderie, and when you do earn your place, um, it's gender blind. And I'm not quite sure how to explain it, but I cherished that because once you earned the respect and the place, then literally my brothers in arms would go to battle for me. And I think that's something incredibly rare and precious. And I do still miss that about the military to some extent. But it was hard. I deployed to Afghanistan as well. And one of the things you get used to is I think there were 5% women out of the 1,500 people there. So everything you do is talked about, noted, watched. You can't go anywhere any minute of the day without someone watching what you're doing. And so you just have to learn how to live with that and be comfortable in your own skin and hold your own. Yeah. But I do think the other, and I talk a lot and I'm very careful about talking about women versus men leaders. To me, it's the gap between good and bad leaders is the one that we should be talking about and what makes good leadership and not so good leadership. And I think that's one of the things I do value from the army and I try and use today is it's actually a very context-driven style of leadership. You lay out the situation, you lay out the intent one and two up, you lay out the resources, and you try and set the conditions for success for your people. Uh, so there are a lot of contradictions.
I think one thing that you said that I do love though that you get out of it, and it was kind of the same word even working with horses. if you develop that trust and respect, the foundation of that trust and respect, then it's a lot easier to achieve your mission because you
Hmm.
trust that other person. And even in business, sitting in a board meeting or whatever, the management teams that we deal with that are successful, we find are the ones that can say anything to each other.
Hmm.
Obviously not malicious stuff, but anything to each other,
Hmm.
because you know you trust where it's coming from to achieve the mission,
Hmm.
and not like thinking about hidden agendas or this or that
Hmm.
or whatnot. Whether it's trust sitting on a horse or trust
Hmm.
in whatever battle, be it army or business or whatnot, it seems to be the foundation of anybody successful.
Yeah, I 100%. And I think there's this misconception sometimes that in the military you just run around yelling orders at people and they jump up and run around and do it. But we know humans, right? If humans don't want to do something, they're not doing it. And so if you're going into a combat zone or a complex peacekeeping activity or anything, what you have is a team, and that team needs to trust and respect your credibility, trust that you have their best interests and will set them up for success. And if they don't trust you, they're going to find ways to not do what you need doing for the mission.
Yeah,
And I think transparency is a critical piece of that. And, because it's kind of like the cows, cows don't care. Um,
I love
you know,
that.
the the battle doesn't care if you were having a bad day or you had a separate agenda or you were trying to do politics. It doesn't care. It's the great leveler and teacher, right? So
I,
that's something I try and bring forward as well. Is it's like business, right? Business doesn't care. It'll teach you one way or the other.
yeah, although I think there's leaders who do care and make a difference, but they care about um, they care about a foundation of trust. They care about
Hmm.
as an expression we use a lot is clear is kind. The clearer
Hmm.
you are about everything, the
Hmm.
kinder you are, and in fact,
Hmm.
the opposite, the worse it gets if you're not clear. That's
Hmm.
totally not being kind to achieve the mission.
Hmm.
And so I did see a repeat of Friends. I don't know if you ever saw the show Friends.
Hmm.
And Joey, who's not portrayed as the smart one in the group, kept saying it's a moo point. And they said, "What are you expecting to it? It's a moo point." He said, "Well, the cows don't care. That's what makes it moo. It's a moo point." And it was hilarious. And they're looking at him like, "Okay, Joey, it's a moo point." But then they were saying it. We know he's wrong, but it actually makes sense. The cows don't. It's a moo point. So,
It's funny. I have to say, on the cow theme, I had a friend in the army once who said whenever she had a difficult decision to make, her window of her office overlooked a field with cows, and she'd draw a circle with a texter through on the window around a cow. And when the cow walked out of the circle, she'd have to make her decision.
well, that's a good way. Why not?
It worked for her. So
Yeah, it's not a moot point, but it could be a
it's
moot
not a
point.
moot point.
Um, well, to another point, they say the fourth industrial revolution is about AI and technology,
Hmm.
and it's moving faster than anybody could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
But there's also conversation that the fifth industrial revolution is about humanity,
Hmm.
um, and how these things come together. And when we focus on how talent, tech, and impact in harmony actually works
Hmm.
really well. Your
Hmm.
your next adventure is pretty major. We're with TE Connectivity.
Hmm.
We talked about this a little bit when we met in Davos, and
Hmm.
you were there twice over 10 years and interrupted by a 4-year stint with Subcom.
Hmm. Hmm.
Can you share with us what experiences stood out for you in terms of innovation, literally on land and below sea? I did see you with sharks below sea, actually, which is crazy. But in terms of innovation and from a business, professional,
Yeah.
even personal experience, perspective, and did it turn out as you envisioned? And then we'll get into what's next.
So, a quick note on how I ended up at TE from the Army. I got the first ever Chief of Army scholarship to study overseas. And I thought, well, if I'm not going to be in hot, sandy places, I probably need to diversify my skill set. So, I ended up getting an MBA at Penn State, which I am forever grateful to Penn State. And I've stayed involved with them since then. Um, because I call it my halfway house. They help me transition and learn how to be, functional in the civilian world, which is important. Um, so
And by the
after
way,
that, I went.
on that point, sorry to interrupt. It's a really important point because we do work with a lot of veterans, and I find so often there's a stereotype that they're only good at logistics and certain leadership, and that's all they're good at. And but they are really good. They, as a general term, but they're
Mhm,
all really good at pointing out what is, and creating a good team and what's the mission,
mhm.
how to get it done, and it's not just about logistics.
Absolutely. And I'll do a free shout out to Transition Overwatch, who are a group that tries to help transition veterans into, civilian roles in business. And
Hmm.
I think there's enormous untapped talent there. They have resilience, they deal well with ambiguity, they understand it at its core what teamwork means. And I think it's easy to teach someone technical skills, but teaching that is really hard. And I think it's a necessary skill set for our world. So I
Especially
was
now.
grateful. Yeah, grateful to Penn State for that. Went back briefly to the Army to pay back my time. I was in a large building with no windows and biometric scanning, writing very classified things about very classified stuff, and decided that longer term this wasn't for me. And it felt like the right time to make a pivot, do something different. So I jumped to the US. I had no house, no job, started interviewing, started all over again from scratch as a finance analyst with TE Connectivity, who do connectors, sensors, harsh connectivity, large industrial manufacturing company. Um, what did I learn over the last, gosh, time has flown, 14 years. And the subcom business was actually owned by TE, but I ended up helping lead an effort to divest that business. And so we sold it to private equity. And I was one of the only people that got pulled back to the mothership of TE. Everyone else went with the business. I think one of the key things I learned was, and I love this, and this is what motivates me still, the world is such a wonderful, complicated place. And when a fridge rocks up on your doorstep or you look at your phone, most people have got no concept of the global complexity and the work of thousands and thousands of people to get that one thing to you at that one point in time. And, TE sells over 200 billion connectors a year. We're in everything. And yet, most people don't know the company. And there's this whole ecosystem so that we can continue to do research and development, engineer, logistics, supply chain, right back through to how do we make sure we track conflict-free minerals? How do we do everything correctly? How are we compliant? How do we look after people? So that just fascinates me. Um, Subcom in particular, that's the internet. People think it goes over the satellites. Now we have Starlink. 95%-ish of the world's traffic, intercontinental, goes over these little pipes under the sea that are the size of a garden hose. And there's only really a few companies in the world that can do these big systems. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
where you wonder with terrorism too. In that sense, it is quite amazing. We've done a lot of work in supply chain, which is, I think, the heart and soul of every company at the
Hmm.
end of the day. And it's kind of what it's amazing with Amazon too, how they can get something to you in like
Yeah.
hours, and stuff. But yeah, you're right. The connectivity, we take a lot for granted. And in our lifetime, we've seen so much. I remember when at Deloitte, the people in they call it the word processing department, were just going to show
Hmm.
some age here. We're all excited when the eraser was in the typewriter. That was a big deal. You didn't have to do the whole thing over. You can erase it right there. And Fast and Furious forward, we've seen a lot, but now we're going to see even more. How do you see how do you see AI evolving?
Oh, I think it's going to be incredibly disruptive. At my heart, I'm an optimist, so I don't fall into the Skynet, the whole world is going to collapse end of the scale.
Hmm.
Um, I see the two major disruptors for the next 5 to 10 years, 20 years are AI and global climate change. And I think the intersection of those two is going to be interesting, volatile, and disruptive, but will bring opportunity as well. The biggest thing I think with AI that I think is consistently underestimated And I think companies know that it's important, but are struggling with how to answer the question is, you know, what work will be done by whom in the next 5 years? And I think there's going to be large disruption for yourself and me. We'll probably surf the wave ahead of this a little, maybe, um,
Hopefully.
maybe. But, to use your analogy, I learned typing at school on the old Olympias, the ding, and now I have ChatGPT. Um, and now I'm looking at how to embed AI in my pricing team or in work processes. I think that's one piece, what work gets done. I think the other piece we need better discussion on and better answers for is historically, the working hour week was how we redistributed productivity from a company or a group or economy back to the participants of it. That I don't think is going to be as useful a measure in the future. And this is where people usually get very upset and start running around and using isms a lot. But I think this is a very real question because if you don't bring people with you, they will simply break what they're not a part of. And I think that's going to be some challenging questions for us.
Yeah, we're having some interesting discussions with executives right now about two things. If there's no entry level positions that people can learn to go up into the next positions,
Yeah,
what's going to happen with that?
right.
How are you going to get your mid or whatever
Hmm.
leaders positions? But secondly, you're going to make a lot more money with some of the layoffs because they're not going to be paying salaries and healthcare and
Hmm.
whatnot. However, they have to make a mindset change of you'll be able to upskill some people, but there'll be others
Hmm.
who may not be able to upskill. And does the company take on a responsibility of keeping some of those people to maybe commit them to the community, to do stuff in the
Hmm.
community? Or do they say, no, that's not what we do. This is capitalism, and all those people
Hmm.
are on unemployment and they get sick because they can't afford health care and this and that and the other. And then you have to
Hmm.
pay more taxes or something because who's going to support people?
Right.
Even though there will be new jobs come up and everything, but it's gonna create a challenge to your point of preventing a, quote, if you will, an Arab Spring type of deal.
Hmm.
Um, but if there's a mindset change, I actually think AI has the opportunity to finally be the major impact on making people happier
Yeah.
if we do it properly. And healthcare is going to be maybe the biggest thing of ever of
Hmm.
of that. So, but to your point, we're going to have to do some really good thinking and not be the same mindset as we just need to make money and whatever happens happens.
Yeah. And I think you touched on it before. It's the combination of tech and humanity and impact. And I think it's dangerous to think that we can separate ourselves. We're all in the same fish tank. And so you can't separate. The cost is carried somewhere.
Right.
Um, but again, I said I'm generally an optimist. I think there's immense opportunity out of this. And I see good corporations leaning into this, and I do see them taking on a different role that I would never have thought of 15 or 20 years ago. So,
They haven't
yeah.
either, but they're going to the mindset has to change. It is an expression one way or another. You'll brand yourself. Uh,
Hmm.
by doing nothing, you brand yourself. By doing something, you brand
Yeah.
yourself, etc.
Yeah.
So, well, one thing we say in Los Angeles is we've got to leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So we'll do that. But I have one more question here. A client told me in 2021, he said to me about 2020, the COVID year, said, it was
Hmm.
a year that flew by slowly. And I thought, really, right on almost. And so many people I talk to, they feel like COVID was yesterday, but also years ago. I just seem to
Hmm.
the same thing. With all that said, we're already into the second half of 2025. Um,
Hmm.
can you share with us what you're most grateful for and also what you're most hopeful for?
Wow, great question. What am I most grateful for? I'm most grateful for, I think I have amazing people in my life, and I'm humbled and grateful for that. And consistently, I just think when I look at a lot of the people around me, what they are doing, how they're trying to make things better in their own space and in their own way, and their commitment to that and the energy they give, that gives me a lot of hope. Um, so I think, what am I most optimistic for? I'm a firm believer that there's going to be steep levels of disruption coming. But I think this is a chance for the people I see who shape these things to also drive positive impact. And I think to be a part of that is exciting. Um, so I
Agreed.
think it's going to be a really interesting next 5 years.
It is. It started at 20, then it went to 15 and 10, and then they're saying the next two is happening. Well, I'm grateful that I have a new friend, and who I got to meet really quick in Davos, and we had a good parting hug, and now, now here we are, which is fantastic. You never know in what moment you're going to meet people
Yeah,
that
yeah,
make a difference, and that also makes me hopeful because you are one of the leaders who care about getting stuff done, and you've shown you do get because the cows don't care, and when something needs doing, you just got to be doing or something to that effect. And that's not a moot point. That's a real point.
that's not a moot point.
So so with that said, thanks for being on the Leaders Who Care series and for being one. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Much appreciated.